Good evening, and welcome to the latest happenings inside our federal machine.
It's Monday. It's January the 5th. It's 2026. This is Faith On with another episode of The Swamp. Governor Tim Walz has made the surprising yet unsurprising announcement that he will not be running again as governor of Minnesota. And Senator Mark Kelly and fellow Democrats posted a viral video instructing the military to disobey Trump's unlawful orders, and as a result, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth announces Senator Kelly's military retirement grade will be reduced, including his retirement pay. Secretary Hegseth is also issuing a formal letter of censure. And Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents booked a number of hotel rooms at the Hilton, and when Hilton staff noticed their occupation through their government email addresses, all reservations were immediately canceled, and the Hilton even replied with an email saying they canceled because of their connections with ICE, and we will have a look at that email. Also, Attorney General Pamela Bondi has unsealed the indictment against Nicholas Maduro, and we'll have a look at that. We'll also check out some updates by officials regarding Maduro's capture, including a statement the U.S. ambassador to the UN made at the United Nations today. And House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries, Team Obama, he said on national television today that drugs being trafficked into the United States is not a threat to public safety or health, because of course he did. And there's a lot more that happened today, so we're going to dive straight in. And if you enjoyed the video, please give the video a quick like if you get a second, and consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed the daily updates, and I might just read your comment on the next episode if you decide to drop one. And every article that you'll see in this video will be linked in the description below. And we're going to start right here with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. 6 weeks ago, Senator Mark Kelly and 5 other members of Congress released a reckless and seditious video that was clearly intended to undermine good order and military discipline. As a retired Navy captain who is still receiving a military pension, Captain Kelly knows he is still accountable to military justice, and the Department of War and the American people expect justice. Therefore, in response to Senator Mark Kelly's seditious statements and his pattern of reckless misconduct, the Department of War is taking administrative action against Captain Mark E. Kelly, USN retired. The department has initiated retirement grade determination proceedings under 10 U.S.C. Section 1370F, with reduction in his retired grade resulting in a corresponding reduction in retired pay. To ensure this action, Secretary of War has also issued a formal letter of censure which outlines the totality of Captain, for now, Kelly's reckless misconduct. This censure is a necessary process step and will be placed in Captain Kelly's official and permanent military personnel file. Captain Kelly has been provided notice of the basis for this action and has 30 days to submit a response. The retirement grade determination process directed by Secretary Hegseth will be completed within 45 days. Captain Kelly's status as a sitting United States Senator does not exempt him from accountability, and further violations could result in further action. These actions are based on Captain Kelly's public statements from June through December 2025, in which he characterized unlawful military operations as illegal and counseled members of the armed forces to refuse lawful orders. This conduct was seditious in nature and violated Articles 133 and 134 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, to which Captain Kelly remains subject as a retired officer receiving pay. And that is the statement from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. And most notably, it's the video that he did with 5 other Democrats talking about how service members, they can refuse lawful orders. You know, in some ways it was vague, in other ways it was pretty direct. I mean, they were clearly talking to the military and telling them that if President Trump has given you an order, you shouldn't have to obey it, because, you know, they consider Trump to be an illegitimate president because he's got felonies, and they don't think that he's the rightful president, even though he got the popular majority, so on and so forth. So they knew what they were doing, and he got censured as a result of it. So I actually have the response from Senator Mark Kelly, and we'll check this out. posted 8 hours ago. Over 25 years in the U.S. Navy, 39 combat missions, and 4 missions to space. I risked my life for this country and to defend our Constitution, including the First Amendment rights of every American to speak out. I never expected that the President of the United States and Secretary of Defense would attack me for doing exactly that. Yeah, dude, you knew what you were doing. My rank and retirement are things I earned through my service and sacrifice for this country. I got shot at. I missed holidays and birthdays. I commanded a space shuttle mission while my wife Gabby recovered from a gunshot wound to the head, all while proudly wearing the American flag on my shoulder. Yeah, dude, that doesn't give you the right to say whatever the hell you want to and instruct members of the military to not follow orders by the president. I mean, come on, dude. You, of all people, should know better than that. Anyway, moving on. Generations of service members have made these same patriotic sacrifices for this country, earning the respect, appreciation, and rank they deserve. Oh, he's really triggered that they might be pulling his rank. All right, anyway, Pete Hegseth wants to send a message to every single retired service member that if they say something he or Donald Trump doesn't like, they will come after them the same way. It's outrageous, and it is wrong. There's nothing more un-American than that. If Pete Hegseth, the most unqualified Secretary of Defense in our country's history, thinks he can intimidate me with the censure or threats to demote me or prosecute me, he still doesn't get it. I will fight this with everything I've got, not for myself, but to send a message back that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump don't get to decide what Americans in this country get to say about their government. All right, well, that's his response. 93,000 likes, 3.8 million views. And how much did Pete Hegseth get? 123,000 likes, 6 million views. And that's that. That's the latest on that situation. And we'll move on to the craziness with Tim Walz. Well, I'm not really surprised at all. Maybe some people are. I'm a little bit surprised that he decided not to run again. But yeah, definitely not a shocker. But anyway, this comes from Benny Johnson 2 hours ago. Tim Walz immediately bolts out of the room after saying he's dropped out of the race. Reporters were audibly shocked. What? You said you'd answer questions. Dodging every question is a glaring sign of guilt, not a good look.
I'm proud of the way we treat our neighbors. I'm proud of the way that we welcome people to this state. I'm proud of the way that we innovate. And I'm proud of the way that we are optimists for the future. No one's taking this away from us. Not the fraudsters. Certainly not this president. Not on my watch. Tomorrow, I'll be back with you. I'll give you an update on America's best paid family medical leave program that is now a week into it. And at that time, I'll
probably rife with fraud.
Thank you all.
Uh-oh. Oh, my God. He bolted the hell out of there real quick now, didn't he? What the hell, Tim Walz? Holy shit, man. He couldn't get out of there fast enough. He bolted out of there so fast the camera couldn't even follow him. Wow, just like Benny Johnson. Sounds like somebody's guilty. It appears that somebody's guilty. Why the hell would you take off so quickly? You gotta answer questions at some point, dude. If not to the American public, then you're gonna have to be hauled in front of Congress, which you will be next month. To be dragged before Congress. All right, well, obviously we're not gonna get any more out of this. So we'll move on to Governor Tim Walz himself from 10 hours ago. Minnesota has to come first, always. Today, I'm proud of the work we've done to make Minnesota the best place to live and raise kids. I've decided to step out of the race and let others worry about the election while I focus on the work. Yeah, right. Like anybody really believes that. So let me see. It's definitely a long-winded letter. I'm trying to decide if I should read the whole thing. You know what? I'm going to just repost it. And if you want to read it, you can go ahead and read it yourself. There's a direct link to my profile in the description below. And if you want, you could go to Gov Tim Walz. He'll have it posted on his profile too for 10 hours ago. And I'm sure it's a bunch of fluff and nonsense, but we'll head on to GOP 7 hours ago. It's just a simple image that they posted. We're hiring. Thank you, Governor Walz. Quality Leering Center with their phone number and the sign and everything. They've since changed the sign. I think they've actually finally corrected it, which is beyond hilarious. And they reposted, or they responded to Democrats, the Democrats. Thank you, Governor Walz, for your service to Minnesota and to our country. And that's that. That's about it. For your service to Somalia, fixed it for you. Yeah, thanks for mutilating and sterilizing little kids. Thanks for tampons in men's bathrooms, billions in Somali fraud, riots all over the place, and a deficit of over $1 billion. The people in Minnesota have been liberated from the ultimate libtard. Amen. Look, I don't live in Minnesota, never been in Minnesota, thanks to his nonsense and like just the the psychopathy that's plaguing Minnesota. Don't really have any desire to go there. I mean, I'm sure they got great fishing over the summer and ice fishing in the wintertime. Okay, so we'll move on to Tom Cotton. Tim Walz is a national disgrace who allowed Somali fraudsters to steal billions in exchange for votes. I'm grateful the Trump administration's investigation of the horrific industrial-scale Somali fraud in Minnesota will continue on. That it will. And RNC research, Tim Walz allowed over $9 billion in taxpayer dollars to be stolen, yet attacks Republicans for investigating by calling it political gamesmanship. We've got Republicans demonizing our Somali neighbors and wrongfully confiscating funds that Minnesotans rely on.
But the political gamesmanship we're seeing from Republicans is only making that fight harder. We've got Republicans here in the state legislature playing hide and seek.
Can't even say it with a straight face.
Whistleblowers.
Why are you so sweaty?
Conspiracy theorist right-wing.
Why are you sweating so much?
Breaking into our daycares, demanding access to our children. We've got the President of the United States demonizing our Somali neighbors,
and a much worse governor of Minnesota.
Confiscating funds that Minnesotans rely on. It's disgusting and it's dangerous.
$18 billion in fraud? Are you kidding, dude? What the hell are you talking about, sir? Or madam, or whatever, gender pronoun that you want to go by. All right, the White House. Venezuelans in the U.S. and worldwide erupt in joy as dictator Nicholas Maduro is captured, and thank President Donald J. Trump for delivering freedom. In case you've been living under a rock and you didn't catch the videos that I did over the weekend, Nicholas Maduro was apprehended. He was captured. He was arrested by the U.S. military and the Department of Justice. And they came, they raided, and they took off. Not a single service member died. There's no official number that I've seen so far of any Venezuelans that were killed. However, I believe that they had to get through some of his bodyguards or something like that. Like, none of that is official or anything. I believe Democrats, they're throwing around a number like 40 Venezuelans were killed. It wouldn't surprise me if there were a few, and they were probably Nicolas Maduro's henchmen. But anyway, Nicolas Maduro was captured, as well as his wife, and they're both in jail in New York City, pending trial. And I actually, like I said at the beginning of the video during the opener, I actually have the indictment that's been unsealed by Attorney General Pamela Bondi, and we'll get to that here in just a minute. But first, let's check this out. In Venezuela.
Régimen de Maduro se fue. Tío Donald Trump. Gracias, tío. Gracias, tío. Viva Venezuela, coño. Viva Venezuela, hermanos.
Gracias, Donald Trump. Mi país es libre ya.
There you have it, posted from the White House, a compilation. Some of those clips I played over the weekend, circulating around social media. Venezuela is overjoyed. They are thrilled, extremely happy. A lot of celebrating happening in New York City and Times Square, and also in Miami. I'm sure all over the country they were celebrating. Okay, so this comes from Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee. The Western Hemisphere is awakening from a Marxist nightmare. Venezuelans are celebrating because they're free at last from the awful chains that have bound them. Naturally, progressives are furious. Oh yeah, they very furious. They so Yeah, they are having so much fun. They are overjoyed. They're thrilled. This is from Javier Milei, who's the president of Argentina. The contradiction of the leftists. What is happening on social media is a perfect example of progressive hypocrisy. I see Venezuelans everywhere celebrating the fall of the narco-terrorist dictator Maduro, but I also see all the communists who live in Western democracies, which are becoming fewer and fewer, crying over the undeniable failure of their ideology, which led to a murderous dictatorship. Progressives say they love democracy, but they cry when a dictator falls. That paints them in full body. They say they defend the people, but they hate to see them celebrating their freedom or what they don't like. Furthermore, the ex-dictator Maduro, who will now spend the rest of his life or the rest of his days in an American jail for having been the head of a narco-terrorist organization that left 90% of Venezuelans in poverty, forcing 8 million people to flee their country so as not to die of hunger, and who, to stay in power, stole the elections, kidnapped Noel Gallo, an Argentine citizen, and has had him disappeared ever since. But of course, the sellouts are us, those who defend Argentines, those who defend freedom and democracy. But that's over. Enough. We no longer tolerate the psychopathic outbursts of those who ruined not only our country, but the entire region with socialist ideas and political practices worthy of the most rancid fascism. Venezuela celebrates. Venezuela is free. The left cries. Freedom advances. Long live freedom, damn it. Amen. Way to go, Javier Milei. That was very well put. All right, rolling on to the next. Senator Dave McCormick. This military operation to protect America's interests was executed brilliantly by President Trump and his team and our brave military, and finally puts an end to Maduro's illegitimate regime. An indicted narco-terrorist dictator, Maduro threatened American and Pennsylvania families. Justice will be served.
Well, it was a great day for the Venezuelan people. It was a great day for our military. What an incredible, as the congressman said, an incredible operation that was executed with great competence, great lethality, and what a great day for the president, who demonstrated once again that he's going to fight for America's interests. And Venezuela, under Maduro, was killing Americans, killing Pennsylvania, a major transshipment center. 4,000 Pennsylvanians died last year from drug overdoses. Venezuela is part of the reason for that, and was also a host to Iran and China and Russia, many of our adversaries, where they could essentially launch terrorist kinds of activities on American soil. So this was a fight for America's interests, and the president and the team and the military executed it brilliantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, a lot of Democrats, a lot of leftists are saying, well, Trump only did this just because he wanted to get the oil. He wanted to please his billionaire buddies in big oil so they can extract all the oil from Venezuela. And the pushback to that was, well, what the hell do you think China and Russia were doing in Venezuela? They weren't there just enjoying a vacation. They were there to freaking drill and extract their oil too. So, you know, you could argue one way or the other. And I'm sure that's definitely going to be an element of it. I highly doubt that we're just going to simply extract all of their oil and just make off with it. But anyway, that's all evolving. I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future with regard to that. I just know that the Trump administration, they plan to start tapping Venezuela's oil reserves. And that alone, I'm sure, will make Venezuela a very prosperous country in a very short amount of time. Not that they're probably going to start doing that until the government is restabilized again, and maybe, hopefully, the rightful president is put into power, because he is currently in exile in Spain. All right, so this is from AG Pam Bondi, unsealed indictment. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton. And we're going to check this out. Not sure how long it is. Oh my God, it is long, 25 pages. I guess I'll just read the introduction if it's not too crazy long. Yeah, I could read the introduction. It's like a page and a half, 2 pages. So let me see if I can zoom in. I can, and let's try to full screen this. That way, if you're watching this on a smartphone, you can follow along. All right, so the introduction. All right, let's see. First off, the United States District Court, Southern District of New York, United States of America versus Nicholas Maduro Moros and Diosdado Cabello Rondon, Ramon Rodriguez Chachin, Celia Adela Flores de Maduro, that's his wife, and Nicholas Ernesto Maduro Guerrera, a.k.a. Nicolasito, a.k.a. the Prince, and Hector Rutherford Guerrero Flores, a.k.a. Nino Guerrero, the defendants. So it's not just he and his wife. They're actually charging others, too. So here's the introduction. Number one, for over 25 years, leaders of Venezuela have abused their positions of public trust and corrupted once legitimate institutions to import tons of cocaine into the United States. Number two, Nicholas Maduro Moros, the defendant, is at the forefront of that corruption and has partnered with his co-conspirators to use his illegally obtained authority and institutions he corroded to transport thousands of tons of cocaine into the United States. Since his early days in Venezuelan government, Maduro Moros has tarnished every public office he has held. As a member of Venezuela's National Assembly, Maduro Moros moved loads of cocaine under the protection of Venezuelan law enforcement. As Venezuela's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Maduro Moros provided Venezuelan diplomatic passports to drug traffickers and facilitated diplomatic cover for planes used by money launderers to repatriate drug proceeds from Mexico to Venezuela. As Venezuela's president and now de facto ruler, Maduro Moros allows cocaine-fueled corruption to flourish for his own benefit, for the benefit of members of his ruling regime, and for the benefit of his family members. Now, quick comment. If you watched either of my videos over the weekend, I showed a video clip of the Mexican president, Steinbaum, I think that's her name. So for them to mention that they were using Mexico, where was that, to launder money or something like that. Let me see if I can figure out where that is. Okay, yeah, so Maduro Moros provided Venezuelan diplomatic passports to drug traffickers and facilitated diplomatic cover for planes used by money launderers to repatriate drug proceeds from Mexico to Venezuela. And now it seems crystal clear why she was so against the arrest of Nicholas Maduro, because she was on camera saying exactly that. That she was very much against Maduro being arrested, that it was illegal and it defies the UN Charter and blah, blah, blah. So now it seems that we now have a better idea as to why she wasn't too happy about this. Anyway, Nicholas Maduro Moros, the defendant, now sits atop a corrupt, illegitimate government that for decades has leveraged government power to protect and promote illegal activity, including drug trafficking. That drug trafficking has enriched and entrenched Venezuela's political and military elite, including Minister of the Interior, Justice, and Peace, Diosdado Cabello Rondon, the defendant and former Minister of the Interior, and Justice Ramon Rodriguez Chaquin, the defendant. That massive-scale drug trafficking has also concentrated power and wealth in the hands of Maduro Moros' family, including his wife, the purported First Lady of Venezuela, Celia Adela Flores de Maduro, the defendant, and Maduro Moros' son, member of Venezuela's National Assembly, Nicolas Ernesto Maduro Guerrera, a.k.a. Nicolasito, a.k.a. the Prince, the defendant. This cycle of narcotics-based corruption lines the pockets of Venezuelan officials and their families while also benefiting violent narco-terrorists who operate with impunity on Venezuelan soil and who help produce, protect, and transport tons of cocaine into the United States. At various times since in or about 1999, Venezuelan officials, including Nicolas Maduro Moros, Diosdado Cabello Rondon, and Ramon Rodriguez Chaquin, the defendants, have partnered with narco-terrorists from Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia, or FARC, and also Ejército de Liberación Nacional, ELN, also the Sinaloa cartel, it's the Zetas, but isn't it the Los Zetas? Anyway, and Tren de Aragua, TDA, including TDA's leader, Hector Rutherford Guerrero Flores, a.k.a. Nino Guerrero, the defendant. In sum, Maduro Moros and his co-conspirators have for decades partnered with some of the most violent and prolific drug traffickers and narco-terrorists in the world and relied on corrupt officials throughout the region to distribute tons of cocaine to the United States. Then it goes on to describe the defendants and just moves on from there. The narco-terrorist organizations working in partnership with the defendants. That's also mentioned in the indictment. So again, it's 25 pages in total. So it's going to go through all the list of the indictments, all that good stuff. That will be, of course, linked below in the description. And you finish sizing this up. All right. And good enough. It ain't perfect. It's not straight, but whatever. Okay, so we'll move on to Rapid Response 47. Watch, U.S. Ambassador to the UN delivers remarks to the UN on the arrest and extradition of Nicolas Maduro. And there's a quote, so we'll hear him say it in the video. It's about 4.5 minutes in length.
This past weekend, colleagues, the United States successfully carried out a surgical law enforcement operation facilitated by the U.S. military against two indicted fugitives of American justice, narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores. Colleagues, Nicolas Maduro is responsible for attacks on the people of the United States, for destabilizing the Western Hemisphere, and illegitimately repressing the people of Venezuela. As Secretary Rubio has said, there is no war against Venezuela or its people.
No,
we are not
they were executing an arrest warrant.
A country. This was a law enforcement operation.
Yeah, the
in
United States government indicted them.
Of lawful indictments that have existed for decades. The United States arrested a narco trafficker who is now going to stand trial in the United States
in
the
left is so
with
mad.
the rule of law for the crimes he's committed against our
They love
people for
dictatorships.
15 years. A similar action was taken in 1989 against Manuel Noriega. He was arrested, indicted, convicted in a court of law, served
Looks like Tammy Bruce behind
in
him.
prison in the United States and in Panama, and the Panamanian people, the American people, are safer for it. And undeniably, the region was more stable. This law enforcement action was directed consistent with the President of the United States' responsibility as Commander-in-Chief to protect Americans at home and abroad against a fugitive who is directly responsible for narcoterrorism that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and created destabilizing violence throughout our hemisphere. Nicholas Maduro and his co-defendant, Celia Flores, have been transferred here to the United States to stand trial for their crimes. Maduro was indicted by a grand jury in the Southern District of New York and faces very serious criminal charges.
Yeah,
for
he was
his
indicted back in like
involvement
2020 or something like that.
Wide-ranging conspiracy to conduct narcoterrorism, to traffic cocaine and other drugs, and conducting international weapons trafficking. The overwhelming evidence of his crimes will be presented openly in U.S. court proceedings.
They've already unsealed the indictment.
Colleagues, Maduro
You read it
is
yourself.
not just an indicted drug trafficker. He was an illegitimate so-called president. He was not a head of state.
No, he lost the election in 2024. 70 to the 30 for
years,
crying out loud.
Maduro and his cronies have manipulated Venezuela's electoral system to maintain their illegitimate grip on power. In fact, just 2 years ago in 2024, a UN panel of experts report.
Damn, dude, they got the rifles out, don't they?
That the election in
Holy
that
shit.
year was absolutely and completely a farce and fell well short of the most basic transparency and integrity measures essential to upholding credible elections. If the UN and the United Nations in this body confers legitimacy on an illegitimate narco-terrorist and the same treatment in this charter of a democratically elected president or head of state, what kind of organization is this? We should note that over 50 countries, many nations, including the European Union, including a number of Latin American countries in the region, and of course the United States, again, over 50 countries rejected the legitimacy of Maduro's re-election following the disputed 2024 elections and do not recognize him as Venezuela's legitimately elected president.
Yeah, but because Trump is president, because, Trump, because I got TDS, so, Trump. All right, so we got one more. It's probably going to be, it might actually be a clip of the same statement, but maybe not, because they both come from the same account, so this might be another part of his statement, which looks like, yeah, that's all quotes, so we'll just hear him out. It's only another minute now.
The United States wants a better future for Venezuela. We believe a better future for the people of Venezuela and for the people of the region and the world is stabilizing the region and making the neighborhood that we live in a much better and safer place. And this is why millions of Venezuelans that have fled this brutal regime are celebrating and cheering around the world as this body pontificates.
That they are. They're all celebrating.
Including, those celebrating are including in my home state of Florida, where hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans have fled this regime's brutality.
That they are.
I want to reiterate, President Trump gave diplomacy a chance. He offered Maduro multiple
many
off-ramps.
times. Many times.
He tried to de-escalate. Maduro refused to take them. President Trump made it clear that the narco-terrorism must stop, and yet it continued. The United States will not waver in our actions to protect Americans from the scourge of narco-terrorism and seeks peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. I thank you, Mr. President.
All right, and you might remember a couple of months ago when President Trump was holding, I don't know if it was a meeting with his cabinet or if it was a meeting with other officials, but the press was there. I think it was actually a cabinet meeting that he was holding, and somebody asked him a question about Maduro, and at the end of Trump's comment, he said something along the lines of, he doesn't want to fuck with the United States. He dropped the F-bomb on television. One of the rare instances where Trump, he gets a bit spicy with his language. So, yeah, he was talking about Maduro when he made that statement because he was asked about it, and the press asked him about it. Okay, so that was 4.5. This is going to be 4.5. Same video. So I'm going to move on to the U.S. mission to the UN on Fox Sunday Morning Futures. Ambassador Walz, U.S. ambassador to the UN, highlighted the president's bold and decisive action in Venezuela. You can watch the full interview here. That's 7.5 minutes. We'll see where it goes. If it gets into other unrelated things, then maybe I'll move on. But we'll see where it goes.
Says Maduro was being highly guarded in a presidential palace, but wasn't able to close the door to a safe room. As the United Nations Security Council is set to meet tomorrow on Venezuela, here's what Ambassador Mike Waltz said to Venezuela's ambassador and the Security Council less than 2 weeks ago.
Maybe we had somebody on the inside who rigged the door in the safe room. Couldn't get it closed.
Does not recognize Nicholas Maduro or his cronies as the legitimate government of Venezuela. Nicholas Maduro is a fugitive from American justice. In fact, Maduro and his regime stole the election, and the international community has the receipts. President Trump has been very clear that he is going to use the full power of the United States of America, the full might of the United States, to take on and eradicate these drug cartels which have operated with impunity in our hemisphere for far too long, and everyone knows it.
Joining us now for a Sunday Morning Futures exclusive, the United States Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. I think the message you delivered was clear. President Trump has been very clear. I think the people with ties to Venezuela, people who believe in law and order, are cheering in the streets. But you're about to walk into a situation tomorrow at the United Nations where a lot of people don't like a strong President Trump, and they don't like a strong United States of America. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
Well, first, Jason, I want to salute President Trump as commander-in-chief and our amazing military, special operations operatives, and law enforcement for the bold, decisive, and successful action that they've taken. In terms of the United Nations and the Security Council, Jason, you're going to hear a lot of hand-wringing on Article 2 of the UN Charter, which deals with sovereignty. And
the Mexican president, she cited that.
Remind everyone of Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, which is, as we have in the past, which is a nation's inherent right to self-defense. So in this case, you have a drug kingpin, an illegitimate leader, indicted in the United States, coordinating with the likes of China, Russia, Iran, terrorist groups like Hezbollah, pumping drugs, thugs, and weapons into the United States of America, threatening to invade its neighbors, its neighbor Guyana, with one of the largest oil discoveries in the world, is under threat from the Maduro regime. One of the largest refugee crises in the world.
There's no doubt that China was shipping precursors for fentanyl into Venezuela.
And at the end of the day, was the United States, was President Trump just going to let that status quo continue? Absolutely not. He gave diplomacy a chance. He gave Maduro a chance. But he took decisive action in the interest of the United States. And Maduro will now be prosecuted in federal court.
It is amazing to me the number of people who don't understand that when Donald Trump actually says something, he means it, and he foreshadows it, and it means peace through strength. But I also, Ambassador, thought it was interesting that earlier in the day, before Maduro was captured and taken, that they were actually meeting with the Chinese. What are the Chinese interests there in Venezuela? Why was Venezuela so important to the Chinese?
Well, a number of reasons. One, the Chinese are moving incredibly aggressively into the Western Hemisphere, into South America. President Trump and Secretary Rubio are pushing back on that hard. But what you've seen is China getting cheap oil.
I bet they moved a lot of shit around during Biden.
Taking key geography, taking things like ports and rail, and food supplies right in our Western Hemisphere, right in Central South America. And this is why, amongst many reasons, this is such a critical national security issue. And to your point, senior Chinese delegation was meeting with Maduro just hours before. And we haven't even started talking about the likes of Hezbollah, Iran, Russia, and others. And here's a bigger picture, Jason, of what President Trump is doing with his foreign policy and the strategic approach here. You now have Argentina moving our way, or is a key ally. Chile moving our way.
It's crazy you met the Chinese that same day.
Honduras.
That we moved in and arrested them.
UN action against the gangs in Haiti with burden sharing there. President Trump knows from the Arctic to our border to Central and South America, our supply chains matter. Our homeland security matters. And we have the food supply, the critical minerals, the energy, you name it, for our national security right here in our Western Hemisphere, but it's been ignored by administration after administration, no longer under President Trump.
Yeah, I do like the idea of the Don Rowe doctrine. It rings bells to me. Explain to us how bad, I like the way you framed it, drugs and thugs. That's what Venezuela was bringing into the United States. How bad was that
they emptied out their prison system and sent them up here in caravans
and
under Biden.
Nicaragua, and crisscrossing this country. But these
El Salvador, Nicaragua,
characters were coming
all those countries
out of
were sending up their prisoners.
And doing so on purpose. I mean, that's what the indictment's all about.
Yeah, and that's the strategic shift. President Trump,
Look at that. Another reason why the Mexican president was pissed off about it.
Secretary Noem and others have made
shipping up in the
these
Pacific.
Groups, Tren de Aragua, Cartel de los Soles, these aren't like our grandfather's mafia. These are more like ISIS and Al-Qaeda with state backing. Maduro was a state backer of narco-terrorism. These operatives are some of the most vicious in the world. They're right here in the United States killing Americans, but they have the backing of Venezuela's military and intelligence service, partnered with the Iranians, the Chinese and Russians, and also the Cubans.
According to this map, it's all cocaine. Like fentanyl was only up here in the northern part of Mexico.
Being threatened, and the president took that decisive action. And you're hearing, Jason, a lot of analogies to Iraq and those mistakes of the past. This is much more like Noriega, a convicted narco-terrorist who is now being brought to justice. Panama, which, by the way, is sitting on the UN Security Council right now as a rotating member, is far better for it. Our region, our safety and security for every American will be far better after this action.
Well, the United Nations meeting tomorrow, and you're going to be there, and we'll be watching. Ambassador Mike Walz, truly.
All right, man. So got the full interview on Fox News. That was yesterday, right? Yeah, Sunday Morning Features, I think it was. Okay, we'll move on to Bernie Moreno. Democrats are freaking out that President Trump is holding a narco-terrorist accountable for killing hundreds of thousands of Americans with deadly poison and for sending millions of criminal invaders into our country. Why? Here's the thread. Number one, because they ultimately sympathize with Maduro's political ideology. They'd love to run America into Venezuela 2.0. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I think that they greatly envy the CCP because it's a communist regime that has little elements of capitalism peppered around here and there. They just think Maduro and Chavez before him didn't do it properly. Of course, they did do it properly. Socialism destroys countries. And number two, the operation was carried out flawlessly and meticulously. They don't want to acknowledge that because they'd have to admit a truism. Our military is the best on earth when there's a commander-in-chief that allows them to do their job. They'd also have to give credit Hegseth. And number three, unlike prior operations fully supported and cheer-led by Democrats, this operation was swift, without a military occupation, didn't cost a single American life, and won't cost the taxpayer a single cent. And number four, President Trump is flipping conventional foreign policy on its head. Instead of focusing on countries really far away, he is focused on our hemisphere. The same people who wanted to empty our treasury to help Ukraine want nothing to do with cleaning up Venezuela. Fancy that. This operation won't cost the taxpayer a single dollar. President Trump has been clear that not only are we getting back the oil stolen from us, but that we will be reimbursed for what this has cost us. This is a massive paradigm change. I don't know the details about the whole oil stolen from us. I imagine that there was probably some contract or some agreement that the United States had with Venezuela that probably went back, who knows how long, 30 years, 40 years. So I'm assuming that was probably the case. And then the leaders in Venezuela at the time, whether it maybe Hugo Chavez or whoever, they probably just, went back on it or voided it unjustly. But I don't know. Anyway, so number six, this was a law enforcement operation. It was a clear and legal execution of an arrest warrant. President Trump could leave Venezuela in chaos, just like previous idiotic presidents have in the past. Instead, he's going to use Venezuelan resources to stabilize the nation. Number seven, they are so consumed by hatred of President Trump that they can't simply acknowledge how successful and gutsy this operation was and can be proud of our incredible military and our nation. Only the American operation could do what was done. Absolutely. And finally, number eight, the biggest issue for Democrats is that a stable, secure, and prosperous Latin America will permanently eliminate illegal migration and drug trafficking. That's two problems for them and their donors. They thrive on cheap labor, and the coastal elites need their cocaine. Well, and also those NGOs, those quote-unquote nonprofits and those activist organizations. I'm sure they get a lot of government funding, when they say that they put up these programs to combat addiction and to help get people the help that they need, which maybe they will. Maybe like a single percentage number probably actually goes to helping people, but the vast majority of that number, it just goes into overhead and six-figure salaries, and you know how all that goes with all those leftist progressive activist organizations. All right, and we'll move on to the next as soon as I get back to where my list was. Holy moly. See, that's why I don't click on these individually, because I have to click back. All right, and it looks like I got another one from Bernie Moreno. So he says, the world is on notice. Unlike DC politicians, when President Trump says he's going to do something, he does it. Maduro learned that the hard way. Joe Biden let our enemies walk all over us, from millions of immigrant invaders to endless new wars overseas. Those days are over. And like the remark I made just a minute ago, that's probably why China moved into Latin America so aggressively, and I bet they did so over the last 4 years. Maybe that was the reason why China deliberately dropped the COVID bomb on the planet, to allow everybody to lock down, shut down, pause their economies, and kind of look the other way, so to speak, while China starts moving resources and people and all kinds of stuff into not only Latin America, but they've already moved heavily into Africa, probably other parts of Southeast Asia, I would imagine. So anyway, let's give this a play. It's on CNN.
This was no surprise. I find it interesting that everybody's surprised by President Trump's moves. He tells people exactly what he's going to do. The problem is here in D.C., we're used to politicians that say one thing and then just don't do it. President Trump means what he says.
Good old
He's not a
smoke
barker.
and mirrors.
President Trump's an actor. He's somebody that actually does what he says he's going to do. When you mobilize that kind of military in the Caribbean, it's pretty obvious. It was obvious to everybody, except for maybe Maduro, who thought that it was just he was dealing with Biden 2.0. And that's why he's now in a jail cell in New York City.
Well, I think a lot of people thought that he was certainly pressuring Maduro so that Maduro would self-exile. And even Secretary Rubio said that there was an offer to Maduro to get out. And I think it was ultimately,
I think there were several.
He could go to Turkey and not be living in prison right now. But
which he'll probably be with his whole life. But look, here's what the message is to the rest of the world.
His wife, too, for that matter.
When President Trump says he's going to do something, he does it. That's new, and it's 180 degrees from Biden. Biden should have acted in many, many instances. We wouldn't have a war in Ukraine. We wouldn't have had this situation.
Like they said, the Democrats, they love this regime.
We wouldn't have inflation.
They want that power. They lust for that power.
On his words. That's the big difference, and that's the message to the rest of the world.
And, Democrats, they can't achieve that agenda until they, brainwash our youth through public education. That's why they're so pissed off that the Trump administration is trying to put an end to the Federal Department of Education. Another thing Mike Johnson should be pursuing that he's not. Anyway, Senate Republicans, Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker and illegitimate communist dictator. His arrest makes Americans, Venezuelans, and our whole hemisphere safer.
We're just simply not going to tolerate these tin-pot dictators who flood our country with criminals, who flood our country with drugs, that have hosted the Chinese and other adversaries as a base of operation for them. We're not going to allow that in the Western Hemisphere.
If you're a drug trafficker and you're indicted in U.S. courts especially, the United States is going to come after you. And we're going to arrest you, and we're going to bring you to justice. And that's whether you're in the streets of the United States or whether you're in a fortified compound in Venezuela.
Maduro and Venezuela are bad. They're hurting America. He gave him every chance to leave. He could be in Turkey now, Maduro, but he's in jail because he miscalculated Trump.
And look, I'm excited for all my friends that have fought all these years for freedom and liberty, and they have not been able to get a president that would show up and do the job that needed to be done. And this president has been willing to do it.
Obviously, the president gave him a lot of chances to get out, but the president decided he couldn't tolerate the drug running. He couldn't tolerate the terrorism.
Look, there is no doubt that Venezuelans have a greater opportunity for prosperity because of President Trump's actions. There is no doubt that Americans are safer and more secure because of President Trump's actions.
Yeah, man, no doubt whatsoever. Absolutely. I mean, let's hope that the transition of power is going to be smooth and peaceful and without too many hiccups and speed bumps. All right, Rapid Response 47, and it's a message from President Trump. And, of course, this whole quote's going to be right here in this clip. It's audio only, so we'll take a listen.
Nation building now? Is that
this isn't a country that's on the other side of the world. This isn't a country like where you have to travel 24 hours in an airplane. This is Venezuela. It's in our area, the Don Road Doctrine.
So is that what you would say, that we're in the business of nation building now?
We're in the business of having countries around us that are viable and successful, and where the oil is allowed to freely come out because that's good. It gets the prices down. That's good for our country. Now, we have a very sick neighbor. It's not a neighbor, but it's close to a neighbor, and that's Venezuela. It's very sick. Colombia is very sick, too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States, and he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
Amen. I don't know, man. They might be paying attention, and they might want to be paying attention over in Colombia. Senate Republican Senator Murphy is wrong. During the first Trump administration, he claimed arresting Maduro would be good for the United States. Now he's against it? What changed? So this was back on January 23rd of 2019. Chris Murphy, Democrat, of course, from Connecticut. If Trump cared about consistency, he would make the realist case for intervention in Venezuela. Getting rid of Maduro is good for the United States, rather than trying to pretend his administration all of a sudden cares about toppling anti-democratic regimes. And this is from 10 hours ago from Chris Murphy, and we'll give this a watch. History shows that America's post-World War II regime change enthusiasts are almost always wrong, and in Venezuela, it appears Trump has spent billions on a mission that has left the same people in charge, just maybe with more favorable deals for Trump's oil buddies.
Listen, there are evil, brutal dictators all over the world. That does not give the American president the right to invade those countries, in large part because we have seen how this script plays out.
Well, you told him in 2019 to do it.
With Senator Cotton, you asked him what the difference was between Iraq and Venezuela. He didn't say the difference was we aren't going to invade Venezuela like we invaded Iraq. He said that if we invade Venezuela, which may be part of the president's plan, it's going to go really well. Over and over again, we have seen these warmongering neocons, many of which have influence in this White House, cheerlead us into war under the guise of removing a very bad man. That ends up getting a lot of Americans killed. And if this is really just about the oil, if this is really just about the natural resources, if this is just about getting a bunch of Donald Trump's friends
not a word about drugs, huh?
even richer.
Notice
I don't
that?
think there's a single
Democrats love
American family
drugs.
who would support having their son or daughter put into harm's way to defend the interests of Wall Street. This is once again American oil interests, American financial interests coming before the actual national security interests of the United States.
Oh, absolutely hilarious. He didn't say a single word about the drug trafficking. That is hilarious, man. All this misdirection bullshit, dude, they're so disingenuous. I wonder if she ended up pressing him on that. Probably not. I mean, come on, give me a break. Of course she didn't. Anyway, moving on to Homeland Security. The great news for those who are here from Venezuela on temporary protected status is that they can now go home with hope for their country. President Trump is bringing stability to Venezuela. Secretary Noem ended temporary protected status for more than 500,000 Venezuelans, and now they can go home to a country that they love.
Given the capture of Maduro, about if that temporary protected status is indeed going to end or if there's going to be a new discussion regarding it, what can you tell us about that program?
Well, that program, temporary protected status, is meant to be just that, which is temporary. And we've seen too many times the loss of integrity in that system. We've seen people come over from Venezuela who are members of Tren de Aragua. They entered this country legally using temporary protected status. Others had vicious criminal rap sheets, and we need to make sure that that program is protected. Unfortunately, we saw it being exploited under the Biden administration to rubber stamp these individuals in. So I'm not seeing any changes to our posture on this. I think the great news for those who are here from Venezuela on temporary protected status is that they can now go home with hope for their country, a country that they love, that there's going to be peace, prosperity, and stability. Tommy.
Amen. Let's hope so. I mean, again, if everything goes smooth. From Rapid Response 47, many Venezuelans have told me, if this really works, we will go back to our country. We want to rebuild our country. We are praying for this moment.
These people from Venezuela, many of them have told me, if this really works, we will go back to our country. We want to really rebuild our country and our nation after 26 years. We're all waiting for this moment. We were praying for this moment that something will happen in their countries sooner or later, because we have seen their struggles. They left their family. Their dreams were shattered. These people from Venezuela, many of them.
All right. Well, and don't forget, 26 years ago, Venezuela was the richest country in South America. So it's absolutely got the potential to be fully rebuilt and be really prosperous once again. House Foreign Affairs Committee Majority Rep. Brian Mast tells Trey Gowdy Joe Biden put a bounty on Nicholas Maduro and President Trump collected that bounty. Under President Trump, there is no useless gesture. So
Maduro
there you go.
said he was ready to talk. The U.S. said, great, we'll come and give you a lift. He was playing a game with Trump, and he lost.
Yeah, I think what President Trump chose time and time again is his foreign policy is never about useless gestures or useless conversation that doesn't lead to anything. He is always a president about action. And let's just make a quick compare and contrast. You know, Joe Biden in previous policy said, okay, I'm going to put a $50 million bounty on Maduro. President Trump came in and collected that $50 million bounty as a function of a law enforcement operation. No useless gestures.
Congressman Jimenez, here is your fellow Floridian Marco Rubio, and then I'll ask you about it on the other side.
You can't congressionally notify something like this for two reasons. Number one, it will leak. It's as simple as that. And number two, it's an exigent circumstance. It's an emergent thing that you don't even know if you're going to be able to do it. The number one reason is operational security. We would have put the people
as you know,
carried this on in harm's way.
All right, so Secretary Rubio once served not only on Senate Intel, he was the chairperson of Senate Intel. He was confirmed without a dissenting vote, but he's right. Things do leak, and that jeopardizes American soldiers. So I think that's why there was no prior notification. Y'all are members of Congress now. What's your reaction?
I have no problem with
look, not only that, but it really wasn't necessary with President Trump being the commander-in-chief. 43 other presidents, 43 out of 45 presidents have used the military without congressional approval. So this isn't anything new. There were only 2 presidents in American history that did not use the military without congressional approval. One of them was William Harrison, who was president for a month? And then the other one was Zachary Taylor, who was president for something like 18 months. So both of those presidents, I believe, had the two shortest terms in office.
The operation, and I have no problem with how they did it. And he's absolutely right. The safety of our servicemen and women is priority number one. And so any chance that something could leak out and jeopardize that safety, I don't think that, I think they made the right call, and I will support them 1,000%.
And to add one point to that, it is simply this. I was briefed on this, and, you know, to say very pointedly, there were very specific threats about leaking this information that had to be dealt with in advance of this operation taking place. It's not just that there was a credible threat, it was rising to the level of putting to the mission in jeopardy, and it was dealt with accordingly.
Well, yeah, man, absolutely, because Democrats, they really do not want Maduro to have been removed from his position, because they just want their communism ideologies to just keep going on and going on, just pretending like everything's fine. There's nothing bad going on in Venezuela. He's doing a great job down there all of a sudden. All right, Secretary Rubio, the experts are clowns. Venezuela looks nothing like Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, or the Middle East, other than the Iranian agents running through there plotting against America. These are Western countries. People need to stop ascribing apples to oranges.
Number one, most of the experts that people have on television, I watch these experts, and it's clown hour. Okay, these are people that have focused their entire career on the Middle East or some other part of the world, because that's where all the action was. Very few of them know anything about Venezuela or the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela looks nothing like Libya. It looks nothing like Iraq. It looks nothing like Afghanistan. It looks nothing like the Middle East, other than the Iranian agents that are running through there plotting against America. Okay,
right.
These are Western countries with long traditions among their at a people-to-people and cultural level and ties to the United States. So there's nothing like that. So I think people need to stop ascribing the apples and oranges here, the apples of the Middle East to the oranges of the Western Hemisphere.
But do you...
Number two, this is about the national interest of the United States. And what I'm confident of is we are in a safer and better place because we're taking it seriously. The alternative would have been to leave Maduro there as an indicted drug trafficker, illegitimate president, running the country, open invitation for all of our adversaries to do whatever they want against the United States from Venezuela. That was not going to continue. The alternative would have been to allow a drug trafficker to continue to use national territory and elements of nation-state power to further drug trafficking organizations. Read the indictment. This guy used the levers of their security apparatus not to arrest drug traffickers, but to cooperate and facilitate the trafficking of drugs for the purpose of getting them into the United States. That's going to stop.
All right, there you go, Rubio. Hell yeah. And we'll move on to House Foreign Affairs Committee Majority. We got one more from them. Rep. Brian Mast. China may sell cheap goods, but it also sells cheap friendships. President Trump just sent a strong message to every anti-American dictator around the world. China can't protect you.
Chairman, Cuba is probably watching somewhat anxiously right now. I bet the president of Colombia did not sleep well.
And I believe after this clip, we're going to move on past the whole Maduro Venezuela thing.
Mexico and other narco states.
I think there's a broad message that's sent in American foreign policy, and I'll bring China into the conversation as well. In Caracas, at the time, in Caracas, Venezuela, was a Chinese envoy. They were trying to send a message to the United States of America about those that are under their hedge of protection. It wasn't taken lightly. And instead, the message that was sent to dictators across the globe and narco-terrorists across the globe is that China is not your hedge of protection. You get no protection from, they might sell cheap goods, but they also sell cheap friendships.
Good point. Congressman Jimenez, before I let y'all go, what happens now in Venezuela? What would you like to see happen both the short and long term?
The legitimate president put into power.
We do have to have stability.
And get back to the way things were.
In a longer term, but not that long, we have to demand free and honest elections and let the Venezuelan people decide for themselves who
we
is
kind of
going to
need that
be
here
their
too,
leader.
though.
I believe that they're going to choose Maria Corina Machado. She's very popular. She has been the head of the opposition.
She won the Nobel Peace Prize last year.
But whoever they choose, it's up to the
And she
Venezuelan
dedicated it to
people.
President Trump.
And so that they can have their freedom back, they can get their country back, and then they can become a friend instead of being an adversary. And they can stop being a shelter for our greatest adversaries, China, Russia.
Yeah, by the way, if you look at the footage, of the strikes in Venezuela the night that it happened, that's what they were taking out. They're taking out these heavy military vehicles that were strategically placed all over Caracas, and they had those, like those missiles that they have on top of those trucks that they can aim up at the sky and they could shoot at enemy aircraft. So they flew in and they bombed those. I don't believe that they bombed a single building. I think that's all they took out. That and possibly an electrical substation, because they did cut power to like a third of the city, or I don't think it was half of it. It was something like a third of the city that they cut power to. So I don't know if they had to bomb an electrical station in order to make that happen. I'm sure there was more to it than just simply pressing a button. But yeah, so that was basically, that's what they were taking out when they were flying in and they were dropping bombs.
Adversaries, China, Russia, North Korea.
That's the Mexican president, I think.
We know we have
Pretty
Hezbollah there also, and so
she's not
that
happy.
Needs to be, we need to stop that, and I believe.
No. Never mind. That's the Nobel Peace Prize lady. I'm sorry. They look similar because they're close in age.
With a new leadership and with free and fair elections, Venezuela will prosper like it should, because it's an unbelievably rich country, and all they need is their freedom.
Yeah, man, almost $18 trillion worth of oil reserves beneath their feet. Largest oil reserves on the planet, at least so far, or so that we've discovered so far. Okay, so from House Republicans, seriously, Rep. Jeffries, according to the #1 House Democrat, flooding our country with trafficked drugs is not a threat to the health, the safety, the well-being, the national security of the American people. It's disgusting and anti-American.
Well, there's been no evidence that the administration has presented to justify the actions that were taken in terms of there being an imminent threat to the health, the safety, the well-being, the national security of the American people.
Okay, well, I mean, may have slightly been taken out of context with this statement. I would have liked to have heard a lot more of that. So I don't know if he's seeming to suggest that the narco-terrorism vessels that were transiting throughout the Caribbean and the Pacific were not transiting drugs or transporting drugs, because they were. They definitely were. If you watch some of that drone footage, it's quite clear what they're transporting. No fishing nets, no fishing rods, just these big, large bales and what appeared to be large bricks of some substance that they were transporting. All right, anyway, rapid response 47. Somalians are ripping off our country to the tune of, it looks like, $19 billion. This is from the president. And but that's only what they can find. Every one of them should be forced to leave this country, including Ilhan Omar, who's a total crook. We're not going to pay it anymore.
It's almost not even believable. This very stupid, low IQ governor, he's a very stupid man, because, I had a campaign against him with JD, and he's a stupid man, and he's a corrupt politician. And
I think that's kind of obvious at this point.
Ripping off our country to the tune of, looks like $19 billion, but that's only what they can find. So usually when you're looking at 19,
Somalia's GDP is only $9 billion, by the way.
But the numbers are astronomical.
The entire
Think
country.
of it. They have a dead country. They don't have government. They don't have anything. They don't have a military. All they do is run around shooting people and trying to capture ships.
I was going to say, they're a bunch of friggin' pirates,
man. We
man.
don't let them take ships anymore. You know why? We use the same exact missile on them that we use on the drug carriers. And it's very effective. So, you notice there's nobody capturing ships anymore? Because as they head out to go capture the ship...
Except illegal Chinese fishing vessels.
Because it's very
Somali pirates are taking them.
Stuff in many cases.
Nobody's going to help out illegal Chinese fishing vessels.
They build $1 billion ship, and they don't want anybody firing rockets into the ship. But we're hitting them so hard, and it's very similar. Same missile system. It's called Deadly Accurate. And you notice that ships aren't being taken anymore? The pirates are...
That's right. I hadn't thought about that.
The pirates aren't... Well,
no Somali pirates.
It's actually very easy. They head out, we say, guess what? There's pirates. Bing, that's the end of the pirates. The shipping business is coming back because, see, these are little things that we're doing. And I'm doing it not just for American ships, I'm doing it worldwide. Because we don't want ships taken by Somalia pirates. But what they are doing is they're stealing money from the American taxpayer. And every one of them should be forced to leave this country, including Ilhan Omar, who's a total crook. And she's one of the leaders of it. Not the only, because she's not that smart. But think of it. $19 billion at least they've stolen from Minnesota and from the United States. It's actually more from the United States because Minnesota puts in, and we're not going to pay it anymore. We're going to have Walz go pay. We're not going to pay them, and we're not going to pay California, and we're not going to pay Illinois with that big slob of a governor that they have?
Oh, man, he was on a roll. So, yeah, I'm assuming that they didn't have cameras at the ready. Maybe they were hitting turbulence or something because this was on Air Force One. You could even tell by just the background noise that they were on Air Force One. Not to mention it's in the title here. But all right, so speaking of Somali pirates, I came across this image. It's not anything verified. I mean, even the account's not verified, so not really gonna take that with any more than a grain of salt. But it got almost 5,000 likes. But anyway, supposedly these are Somali pirates back here that have taken an illegal Chinese fishing vessel, and from what I've read, they've been doing that recently. Like if they come across Chinese fishing vessels, they take them. And so, yeah, so that was circulating around over the weekend. And this is from Andrea Schaefer, anti-Marxist warrior. Minnesota hiring child care actors. Craigslist is hiring child actors, presumably to smooth over the public relations nightmare in Minnesota. Daycare hiring child actors for a 3-day contract, Ventura Village. Help Us Daycare. Compensation $1,500 a day, up to 3 days, $4,500 in total. Employment type contract, experience level, no experience required. Job title, actor. Hi, all. Here, let me see if I could just read it on. Well, no, it'd probably be better if I just read it here because that's kind of hard to read. Or it's, I can't really zoom in on X, unfortunately. Anyway, it says, hi, all. My family runs daycare here in the city and have for over 5 years until Monday when funding was cruelly ripped away without cause. Due to this insane poor decision, clear in white supremacy, we had to close our doors immediately. We must prove we are a functional daycare to get the funding back. The issue is the entire client base has already found new daycare services, so we need to find new client base quickly. So it's so crazy how blatantly that they're breaking the law, just publishing this stuff on Craigslist. And yeah, so that's the full Craigslist ad. And what else they have? Okay, so they've got like just the general map, and then the compensation, the employment type, and so on. It says send your child's age and a note of what makes your child a special actor. Submit phone number as well, as we will be doing a quick phone interview as part of the hiring process. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to read this ad. Crazy, man. And then this is a quick, I don't know what this is.
But I've not been perfect, and I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect, and I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been.
All right. So, yeah. Governor Tim Walz, probably something he actually said. Probably not AI. Okay, so from Homeland Security, no room at the inn. Hilton Hotels has launched a coordinated campaign in Minneapolis to refuse service to DHS law enforcement. Again, this is Homeland Security's official account that they're sending this out on. When officers attempted to book rooms using official government emails and rates, Hilton Hotels maliciously canceled their reservations. This is unacceptable. Why is Hilton Hotels siding with murderers and rapists to deliberately undermine and impede DHS law enforcement from their mission to enforce our nation's immigration laws? And I accidentally said the R word here on YouTube. My apologies, YouTube. All right, anyway, begin forwarded message. The subject is upcoming reservation. And actually here, let me start back here. All right, so hold on. This email is in regards to the reservation you made with Hampton Inn Lakeville property. We've noticed an influx of GOV reservations made today that have been for DHS, and we are not allowing any ICE or immigration agents to stay at our property. If you are with DHS or immigration, let us know, as we will have to cancel your reservation. Please pass on this info to your coworkers that we are not allowing any immigration agents to house on our property. Reply at your earliest convenience. Sounds like we got another boycott on our hands. So anyway, this says from the Hilton, after further investigation online, we have found information about immigration work connected with your name, and we will be canceling your upcoming reservation. You should see a proper cancellation email in your inbox shortly from Hilton. Unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. And from Just Gen RX, well, it looks like ICE raids need to happen at Hilton hotels because they 100% hire illegal immigrants. This is from Google AI Overview. All right, just was going to try to zoom in a little bit, but it ain't going to let me. Anyway, so while Hilton officially hires legally authorized workers, including refugees and those on visas, and has programs for diverse hiring, reports and industry trends suggest many hotel chains, including major ones like Hilton, may employ undocumented workers due to labor shortages. with some past legal issues related to employment verification for foreign-born staff. The accommodation sector in general relies heavily on foreign-born labor, and while Hilton promotes legal pathways, the reality of widespread labor needs makes hiring undocumented workers a complex issue within the industry. Yeah, because they want to pay slave wages, basically. They want to just make their employees essentially indentured servants, because otherwise they would just pay a fair wage and Americans would work for them. So Hilton just, I guess they blatantly say that they do want undocumented workers so they can pay them essentially sweatshop wages, really. All right, so moving on to Homeland Security, 22,000 strong and growing. ICE's unprecedented recruitment campaign has shattered all expectations. With a 120% increase in agents and officers, ICE will help fulfill President Trump's promise to make America safe again. Join.ice.gov, just in case, even though that they've gotten like 220,000 applications, so they've got like 10 times the number of applicants in comparison to who they've actually hired, at least thus far. So yeah, 120% ICE manpower increase, 12,000 more officers and agents on the ground. And this is from the White House. HHS is tightening oversight nationwide by freezing child care payments pending documentation, also enforcing Medicaid repayment rules for sponsored immigrants, and investigating alleged fraud within Minnesota's Head Start programs. Minnesota fraud. The Department of Health and Human Services has frozen child care payments and started requiring a justification, receipt, or photo evidence for all child care related payments nationwide, and is enforcing a long-ignored federal law to demand repayment of Medicaid benefits incurred by sponsored immigrants from their sponsors. HHS is also currently investigating Minnesota's Head Start programs over allegations of fraud by illegal aliens. And moving to Deputy Secretary Jim O'Neill from HHS, I can confirm public speculation that Ambassador Abukar Dahir Osman, permanent representative of Somalia to the UN and president of the Security Council, is in fact associated with Progressive Healthcare Services, a home health agency in Cincinnati. HHS has previously taken action against Progressive in response to a conviction for Medicaid fraud. More to come. So, needless to say, I bet he's under investigation now if he wasn't already. And from the FBI, Julie Danielle Ray was last confirmed to have been seen in Calera, Alabama back in 2015. She has tattoos on both of her arms and a tattoo of the words Jalen and CJ on one of her legs. Help the FBI find her. Of course, it's a missing person. And here's a link to her missing person's profile. So it's on FBI.gov/wanted/kidnap. So I don't know if they have a whole section on those who have been kidnapped. Yeah, they do. Look at this. Kidnappings and missing persons from the FBI. And there she is right here. She's number 3 on this list. So they've got a large database, all missing people, including those who have been kidnapped. And that's the real reason. I mean, in addition to hopefully somebody out there knows who she is. Perhaps she's still alive. That would be great to get a happy ending out of that. But the other reason that I put this in tonight's episode is also to show, or at least try to see if they did have a wanted or not a wanted section. I already knew FBI had a wanted section, but I wasn't sure if they actually had a kidnapped section specifically, but turns out they actually do. You could filter it by the year. You can filter by the title, description, and category. And so that'll be linked down in the description if you want to take a look at that. And from FBI Director Kash Patel from 9 hours ago, we finally have a president willing to take on the deadly narcotics trafficking industry, killing tens of thousands of Americans. President Trump led the way for us getting 13 precursors and 8 chemical adjuster agents listed out of China earlier this year. And now he's breaking the cartels in South and Central America. The flow of fentanyl stops and it suffocates the drug trafficker funding. Thanks to that leadership, FBI has already increased our level of fentanyl seizures by over 30%. And it would have been enough to kill 170 plus million Americans. Countless American lives will be saved.
Director, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you meet with Chinese officials about stopping the precursors to fentanyol? And what
he flew out there. He flew out there personally.
Meeting, the president pushed.
He went all the way out to China to meet with them.
Stop it. What could you tell us happened with the flow into Mexico, where they refine it and send it to us?
That's just it. There was nobody, no other administration was willing to engage with our counterparts on things like fentanyl, which were killing almost 100,000 Americans per year. And President Trump laid the groundwork for us to go over there and engage directly and say, hey, you got to shut off the flow of the chemical precursors, the ingredients that they utilize to make fentanyl. And we went over there and we got that agreement while we were there, thanks to President Trump's leadership. And we were able to literally shut off the flow of all 13 precursors and 8 chemical adjuster agents. And what that does is it suffocates the drug trafficking organization's ability in Mexico and South America and Central America and elsewhere to create and manufacture the fentanyl. And just look at what we did this past year under President Trump's leadership. We seized enough fentanyl to kill 175 million American citizens. That is an increase in fentanyl seizures by over 30%. That is what a coalition, a team-led effort by a decisive White House and President Trump looks like to counter narcotics, not just these great successful operations like what we saw this past weekend in Venezuela, but a continuing onslaught of law enforcement activity to safeguard the American public, and we're not going to stop.
Well, of course, on the drug front, it's probably going to cause a power vacuum. You know, there's going to be, well, I mean, just because Maduro's out of the way, yeah, that probably throws a big kink in the chain of these drug traffickers. However, they're still going to try to get all these drugs into the country. Just because Maduro's out of the way doesn't mean that they're just going to stop. But, hey, man, just continue the fight. That's really all we can do. And hopefully they'll start going into, look, I know to what extent boots on the ground, most Americans are not going to be cool with that. But, you know, like, how are we going to combat the war on drugs? You know, exactly how are we going to go about it? Because we've been fighting the war on drugs for, 40, 50 years, and it's still going on. Anyway, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, an Afghan national who plotted an election day terror attack, will serve a 15-year prison sentence. Abdullah Haji Zada held a U.S. green card when he conspired on behalf of ISIS to receive 2 AK-47 style rifles and 500 rounds of ammo, knowing their intended use was a violent 2024 election day attack. ICE Homeland Security Investigations Special Agents initiated this investigation, executed the search warrants, and made the arrests in this case. After Zada serves his sentence, ICE enforcement and removal operations officers will deport him to Afghanistan. And let's see if they have anything else on that, or if that was all they shared. Yeah, okay, so that's all they shared. Sometimes they link an article to a .gov website, but anyway. Let's move on to Senate Republicans. North Carolina Republicans have officially taken the lead in voter registration. Time to win in 2026. This is going to be on Fox News. They finally caught up to Democrat registrations and surpassed them. And in North Carolina, registered Democrats have been falling like crazy over the last couple of years. I think it was like by 1 million. It was a huge number of individuals who I guess unregistered as Democrats. And of course, Republicans saw a very sharp increase in individuals who registered as Republicans. And looks like the Republican Party overtook the Democrats, at least by the numbers, in North Carolina. So Republicans have officially surpassed Democrats in North Carolina voter registration for the first time in the state's history, marking a dramatic political shift in one of the nation's most closely watched battleground states and a development Republicans tell Fox shows the effectiveness of the Trump agenda. Over the weekend, North Carolina State Board of Elections data showed registered Republicans now slightly outnumber registered Democrats statewide. As of early January, the state reports approximately 2.315 million registered Republicans compared to 2.313 million registered Democrats, giving the GOP a narrow but historic edge. Republicans are crushing Democrats' voter registration advantage in North Carolina and taking control statewide thanks to Michael Whatley's leadership. RNC Chairman Joe Gruters exclusively told Fox, quote, President Trump's America First agenda is winning. Democrats are failing. Their out-of-touch liberal agenda is being rejected, and voters are done with Roy Cooper and Josh Stein. Whatley, the former chair of the RNC, who is now running for Senate as a Republican in North Carolina, told Fox that the development signals that voters in the Tar Heel state want a strong economy with more jobs, bigger paychecks, and lower costs. That's why they voted for President Trump 3 straight times, and why thousands are continuing to leave Roy Cooper's Democratic Party, Whatley added. Democrats couldn't win Senate races here even when they had a cash advantage and a huge voter registration edge. Now they've lost that registration advantage too, and voters are making it clear they're done with failed Democrat leadership. The voter registration milestone represents a significant reversal from just a decade ago. In November 2016, Democrats held a voter registration advantage of more than 645,000 voters over Republicans. Yeah, I thought it was over 1 million, but still, 645,000 is huge. And now, Republicans have overtaken those registered numbers. It's absolutely wild, man. Since then, the gap has steadily closed as Democratic registrations declined and Republican numbers continue to grow. The registration momentum follows a series of high-profile political events in the state, including Trump's visit to Rocky Mount in December, which energized GOP activists and coincided with intensified voter registration efforts. And voters across North Carolina are rejecting the Democrats' failed agenda and choosing Republican leadership. NRCC Chairman Richard Hudson told Fox, quote, "This shift didn't happen overnight. It's the result of years of good common sense Republican governance and our focus on offering serious solutions on the issues that matter to the people. We're going to keep earning voters' trust and building on this momentum." Look, it's not just the federal level that you got to worry about. As far as us as individuals, it's the local government and the state level government that's a lot more important to us. At the local level. I mean, that's really the government that's the most important to us individually. And yeah, I would say Republicans are probably doing a much better job on the local, regional, state level than I'm sure they are up on the federal level. Anyway, so despite the GOP milestone, unaffiliated voters remain the largest bloc on North Carolina's voter rolls, totaling nearly 3 million registrants. Political analysts have noted that both parties will continue to compete aggressively for these voters, who often decide close statewide races, and some have suggested that the shift is driven less by GOP gains than by long-term structural and strategic changes, along with younger voters rejecting political labels. Madison Andrus, a DCCC spokesperson, told Fox the GOP's share of registered voters over the last several decades has not grown significantly, despite their repeated attempts at gerrymandering the state to subvert the will of voters. Of course, the Democrats, they got to blame it on something besides themselves. Now, with this latest scheme top of mind, voters across the state are souring on Republicans' failing agenda that has led to higher grocery prices, more expensive health care, and greater difficulty making ends meet. Biden, Democrats. That's all I got to say on that. Higher grocery prices definitely happened under Biden. More expensive health care, Obamacare, hello. Greater difficulty making ends meet, yeah, all under Biden policies. And, of course, the COVID era. Republicans have abandoned North Carolina's working families, and people are taking notice. See, man, they can't own up to anything. It's all about blaming the other side for what you're already guilty of. Trump has won North Carolina all 3 times he ran for president, the only presidential candidate in the modern era to do so. But low propensity MAGA voters and other Trump supporters don't always head to the polls in elections when the president's not on the ballot, which is a major concern for Republicans heading into next year's midterms. In addition to historical trends showing the party not in power usually performs well in midterms. So anyway, I'll just cut it there. There's just a little bit left to go through, but I mean, I think we got the point. All right, so from Speaker Mike Johnson, this week, House GOP will advance the next set of fiscal year 26 funding bills and build momentum towards completing the annual appropriations process without a bloated omnibus bill. I commend Chairman Tom Cole and the bipartisan committee-led work to deliver full-year funding bills that spend less than another continuing resolution, deliver critical priorities for our members, and continue to advance President Trump's America First agenda. As these bills come to the floor, we are reaffirming our commitment to return to regular order, restore accountability to the process, and be responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. And did he get ratioed? No, he didn't. Pretty close, though. 590 comments, 640 likes. It's come up from time to time that he's been getting ratioed here and there on the X platform. House Appropriations. Today, the House Appropriations Committee, led by Tom Cole, releases conferenced CJS, Energy and Water, and Interior bills. And it says President Trump set an important foundation by signing 3 appropriations bills into law in November, and we are carrying that momentum into the new year. This bipartisan bicameral package reflects steady progress toward completing fiscal year 26 funding responsibly. Quote, it invests in priorities crucial to the American people, making our communities safer, supporting affordable and reliable energy, and responsibly managing vital resources. It also delivers critical community projects nationwide, along with investments in water infrastructure, ports, and flood control that protect localities and keep commerce moving. Quote, developed through committee-led negotiations and thoughtful deliberation, this package demonstrates how an accountable process produces strong policy. I commend our cardinals for their leadership in producing a measure that turns priorities into action and puts America first. From Chairman Tom Cole from the Appropriations Committee. And heading down to the next from Mark Werner, Democrat. How is Trump planning on running another country when he hasn't done anything about rising grocery or rent prices? This is hilarious. Definitely ratio damn near 5-1. So he's a little unhinged, and the comments seem to prove that. Way outnumbering the
Congress
likes.
is back in session today, and boy, my Republican partners have got some explaining to do.
Oh boy, oh boy.
In Venezuela? Trump keeps
How
saying
dare they?
He's going to run it. Rubio keeps saying
He
we're
won
gonna
all
simply
7
give
swing
orders
states.
from our armada offshore. This is chaos. This is how great nations start to unwind when they don't have a plan. When you take out a leader of a nation state that's got close to 20% of the world's oil reserve. And the whole idea that we've heard so many times, well, don't worry, Americans won't cost us anything because the Venezuelan oil will pay for it. Well, I've talked to experts that says it would take 2 to 3 years at minimum to get the Venezuelan oil fields back operating. Are we going to stay engaged
Okay.
that long?
Then we'll wait 2 to 3 years.
There's never been a case where Congress has got a constitutional role to do oversight. It's now. Well, first crack we'll get at that is later today when a Gang of 8 meeting is scheduled, and we'll get our first chance to start getting some answers. Listen, we
Yeah,
know
just start
our military
screaming
did
rabble.
an
Oh my
incredible
God, how
job.
dare
We
you?
know that Maduro was a bad guy, but our
But there's the but. If you watch my videos over the weekend, I did that repeatedly. I showed 40 different Democrat posts, unhinged posts. They were so pissed off that Maduro was captured. I'm telling you. Yeah, and not only did I do a video on it, I actually clipped it into a separate video, which I think was a damn near an hour long in and of itself. Actually, I think it was over an hour long, of these 40 different Democrats posting their fury over Trump getting Maduro apprehended. And they said the same, like so many of them said the same thing. Well, we understand that Maduro was a bad guy, but, of course, they dropped this like giant but like Trump shouldn't be like cozying up to billionaires, man.
The last generation's ability to do nation building and no cost to the American people hadn't been the case. It's been a flat out lie. Meantime, I don't know if anybody has noticed, grocery prices aren't coming down. Rent's
Well,
not
we haven't
going
had a
down.
Trump before
Utility
now.
bills still going up. Where is this president's focus
Except
on
Trump
domestic
1.0.
needs of the American
Which is still
people?
way
We
better
deserve
than
better.
Biden and Obama. All right, whatever. House Democrats are forcing a vote to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits to keep healthcare costs low for Americans. Yeah, that's not. All it's doing is just masking it, just putting a mask over the true costs of what Obamacare really has ballooned up to. Everyone deserves access to quality, affordable healthcare, and we're fighting like hell to make sure they have it. And I guess it ain't going to happen. But of course, that's all they want to do is just kick the can down the road because they don't want to deal with, the hard work that it would take to actually fix the problems, the disaster that Obamacare has created. No thanks to the Democrats. All right, so this comes from Stephen Miller. Not long after World War II, the West dissolved its empires and colonies and began sending colossal sums of taxpayer-funded aid to these former territories, despite have already made them far wealthier and more successful. The West opened its borders, a kind of reverse colonization, providing welfare and thus remittances, while extending to these newcomers and their families not only the full franchise, but preferential legal and financial treatment over the native citizenry. The neoliberal experiment at its core has been a long self-punishment of the places and peoples that built the modern world. So there you go. And Stephen Miller, by the way, is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor for or under President Trump. All right, defense news. Barack Obama declared the Monroe Doctrine dead. Under Trump, it finds new life. And this is an interesting read. I read about half of it because I wasn't sure if I should include this or not, but I figure why not? I don't know if I'm going to have time to read the whole thing, but I'll at least get it started and then I'll link it below. With the ousting of Venezuelan President Nicholas Maduro on Saturday, U.S. President Donald Trump cited the Monroe Doctrine, the 200-year-old lodestar of U.S. diplomacy, which the Obama administration declared dead in 2013. We have superseded it by a lot, Trump told reporters on Saturday. They now call it the Donroe Doctrine. American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again, he said. First articulated by President James Monroe during a December 2nd, 1823 congressional address, Monroe warned European powers to accept that the Western Hemisphere was solely within America's sphere of interest, and it soon became a watchword of U.S. policy in the Western Hemisphere, according to the National Archives. But Monroe and his Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, feared European excursions within the newly independent Latin America countries, and the doctrine was designed to break the New World from the Old. Decades prior, Adams' own father, John Adams, who would become the country's second president, spelled out this fear during the 1782 preliminary Articles of Peace negotiations between the United States and Britain to British Commissioner Richard Oswald. When taunted by Oswald for being afraid of being made the tools of the powers of Europe, Adams replied bluntly, "Indeed I am." Quote, "It is obvious," a quote, he continued, quote, "that all the powers of Europe will be continually maneuvering with us to work us into real or imaginary balances of power. They will all wish to make us a make-weight candle when they are weighing out their pounds. Indeed, it is not surprising, for we shall very often, if not always, be able to turn the scale. But I think it ought to be our rule not to meddle." I think they meant to say ought. I think it ought to be our rule not to meddle, maybe. All right, anyway, since Monroe first uttered the foreign policy, however, the Monroe Doctrine has been codified and used to justify American interventions in Latin America. Is Latin America? 42 years later, the Declaration, combined with the ideas of manifest destiny, provided precedent and support for U.S. expansion on the American continent, writes the State Department. In 1865, the U.S. government, in support of Mexican President Benito Juarez, exerted military and diplomatic pressure that enabled Juarez to remove Emperor Maximilian, who had been placed on the throne by the French government. The Monroe Doctrine came into its own and acquired its imperialist character, however, under President Theodore Roosevelt and his big stick foreign policy. In his 1904 message to Congress, Roosevelt issued his own corollary, tying action to the doctrine. Quote, "Chronic wrongdoing may in America, as elsewhere, ultimately require intervention by some civilized nation," he said. And in the Western Hemisphere, Roosevelt noted, "the adherence of the United States to the Monroe Doctrine may force the United States, however reluctantly, in flagrant cases of such wrongdoing or impotence, to the exercise of an international police power. Acting as an international police power saw the U.S. annex Hawaii, seize Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Guam, intervene in Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, and help foment Panama's secession from Colombia to pave the way for the Panama Canal. The Cold War led to further interventions regarding fruit in Guatemala and oil in Iran. Mark T. Gilderhus, a former diplomatic history professor at Texas Christian University, wrote in 2006. Couched in rhetoric emphasizing commitments to solidarity and democracy, Gilderhus wrote, "The doctrine had consistently served U.S. policymakers as a means for advancing what they understood as national strategic and economic interests." So let me see how much. Okay, so yeah, so there's quite a bit left, so I'll just wrap this up. Yet in the latter half of the 20th century, the Monroe Doctrine and empire building fell out of vogue. But under the Trump administration, however, the policy is back in fashion. On Saturday, Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were extradited from their home in the capital of Venezuela and arrived in New York to face U.S. charges of participating in narco-terrorism. And I'll just leave it there. And if you want to read the rest of that, it'll be on defensenews.com, linked below. All right, and we got this from DOW Rapid Response from 7 hours ago. Welcome to the USS John F. Kennedy, Secretary of War. Looks like Pete Hegseth is on the USS John Kennedy today. Of course, doing the meet and greets, wearing the hard hats. All right, Department of War CTO. We want the biggest, most badass military on the planet. Advanced technology equals unmatched lethality.
In short, we want the biggest, most badass military on the planet.
Hell yeah, we do.
American drone dominance.
Hell yeah, we are.
We want the biggest.
They say I'm the biggest, the largest. The stepping on this is my mama laid in the bars. My daddy told me keep it heat even when I'm the chorus. I'm honest. Good niggas is hating on me just because I'm the biggest, the largest, big.
All right, okay, whatever with the remixing. I think the government's not very good at doing that. Whatever. All right, Caroline Levitt, promise made, promise kept. Thank you, President Trump. And this is a true social post from President Trump. And he says, today, the Trump administration is proud to announce the United States of America's updated childhood vaccine schedule. This schedule is rooted in the gold standard of science and widely agreed upon by scientists and experts all over the world. Effective today, America will no longer require 72 jabs for our beautiful, healthy children. We are moving to a far more reasonable schedule where all children will only be recommended to receive vaccinations for 11 of the most serious and dangerous diseases. Parents can still choose to give their children all of the vaccinations if they wish, and they will still be covered by insurance. However, this updated schedule finally aligns the United States with other developed nations around the world. Congratulations to HHS Secretary Bobby Kennedy, CDC Acting Director Jim O'Neill, FDA Commissioner Marty Makary, CMS Administrator Dr. Oz, NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya, and all of the medical experts and professionals who worked very hard to make this happen. Many Americans, especially the Maha moms, have been praying for these common sense reforms for many years. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Then it shows the 11 injections, the illustration of the European countries, and the United States with 72 injections. So now they've dropped the standard down to 11 from 72. Probably a very good move. And this is from Rapid Response from HHS Jim, and that is Jim O'Neill, the Deputy Secretary. He says, a lot of our scientists recommended that we converge United States recommendations on the consensus recommendation vaccines of other countries, and I just signed a decision memo today doing just that.
You know, many people have noticed that the United States has recommended more and more vaccines for children every year. They've gone from 23 doses for 7 diseases in 1980 to more than 80 doses for 18 diseases now.
Insane.
That's a huge number of vaccines. Many parents are concerned that they're injecting their young, innocent children with a lot of medicines. They're not sure about the risks and benefits of all these. And many people have been asking questions. We've been looking at this all year. We've had the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices do deep considerations of the safety record for certain vaccines. And the president last month asked me to consider what other countries are doing. He noticed that some other very developed countries recommend fewer vaccines for a lot of their children, and it seemed worth talking to them and seeing what their logic was. So I had the pleasure of having good conversations with health ministries, my counterparts in Germany and Denmark and Japan. Also talked with our career vaccine scientists at FDA and CDC. And a lot of our scientists wrote a long formal assessment recommending that we converge United States recommendations on the consensus recommendation vaccines of other countries. And I just signed a decision memo today doing that.
All right. Well, there you go. I mean, 72 vaccines. Are you freaking kidding? I mean, it's a lot. It's a hell of a lot. But if you want your children to get them, then at least it's still covered by insurance. But I can't help but wonder what part Big Pharma plays in all this. And I think equally as importantly, why Europe? Why do so many countries in Europe only use 11 vaccines and not 72? I mean, what are the ones that Europe decided not to use? I mean, it doesn't sound like that it's that these vaccines aren't being used to combat diseases that are all that problematic. All right, so this is from Secretary Kennedy. It's not related to the vaccines, but it's still something important. I joined Secretary Rollins and AG Pam Bondi to fight animal cruelty, shutting down puppy mills and cutting unnecessary testing. A nation is judged by how it treats its animals, and this administration is delivering real accountability and reform.
I've been an animal welfare
Good news all
my
around.
whole life, and we have this unusual confluence right now at HHS where all the major agency heads, sub-agency heads, are all deeply committed to ending animal experimentation. And the badge of a really humane nation is the way that it takes care of its animals.
USDA is 1/3 of this effort because we do regulate the puppy mills. The puppy mills is a very big problem in this country. Well, that changes under this administration, and we believe it to be historic.
Yeah, we're forming a strike force, as you know, and we're going to have designated U.S. attorneys in every state to prosecute these cases. We're going to work hand in hand with people from Bobby's agency, from Brooks' agency, work together to stop animal cruelty. And, you know, when you hear dog fighting, they torture these dogs, they electrocute these beautiful animals, and no longer. Our children, our animals, our pets are the most vulnerable.
Very, very nice. Well, I mean, and obviously I'm not much of a dog lover, but, you know, they're all right. I grew up with a Rottweiler, and he was a wonderful dog. Amazing family dogs. They're very protective, and he would growl his ass off if you tried to take his tennis ball, which we did all the time as kids, but he never snapped, never bit, never got overly aggressive. I think Rottweilers just by, maybe it was just him specifically, because he's the only Rottweiler that I ever knew, but he growled a lot. But he was a very, very wonderful dog. All right, so anyway, U.S. Ambassador to NATO, this week's U.S.-NATO huddle, year ahead. So let's hear
on
what
July
NATO's,
4th,
what's going on with
our
NATO.
great nation will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence.
Oh yeah, of course, man, the big 250.
This anniversary reminds us that we are a nation built on freedom, courage, and the determination to chart our own future.
Damn right we are.
This is
At
an
least for now.
invitation to all Americans to celebrate our story. And on the horizon, this year's NATO summit will take place in Turkey, a key ally. There we will build on last year's success and move forward the next set of major accomplishments for the alliance. No matter what the new year brings, one thing is certain. In 2026, we will continue delivering on President Trump's agenda for the American people and keep ensuring our European allies lead on Europe's conventional defense. It's going to be a historic year, and America is leading the way.
All right, man, let's do it. Happening in Turkey this year, the NATO huddle. All right, GOP from President Trump. We have taken in and will soon be receiving more than $600 billion in tariffs, but the fake news media refuses to talk about it because they hate and disrespect our country. And they want to interfere with the upcoming tariff decision, one of the most important ever of the United States Supreme Court. Because of tariffs, our country is financially and from a national security standpoint far stronger and more respected than ever before. God bless America, President Donald J. Trump. And this comes from the U.S. Mint. Oh yeah, which by the way, they're supposed to be coming up with this decision any day now. I did read, I believe it was on Friday, on my Swamp episode on Friday. Maybe it was Thursday, but I did read a post from someone stating that they're very close to a decision. So we might be hearing their decision any day now. So it's getting close. And of course, President Trump believes that they're pretty close to a decision as well. All right, so from the United States Mint, releasing into circulation today, the Mayflower Compact Quarter is the first of 5 new quarter dollar designs for 2026. Learn more about the design in hashtag America250 on our website. And that's going to be the website. And okay, yeah, that's just an at America250. Of course, I am a human. U.S. Mint. Semi-quincentennial coins and medals. Sign up for emails. You want to get a bunch of emails from them, from the U.S. Mint. So I'll link this. And it looks like, okay, so these are going to be the those are the quarters that they're going to be releasing. Actually, these are all quarters. It said 5, right? Yeah, 1 of 5. Okay, wait a minute. So front and back, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I guess we're getting a bonus one. So yeah, there appears to be 6 here. And yeah, so they actually do have 1776 to 2026 printed on the front of the quarter, just like they did on the bicentennial quarter. So that's very cool. And the Mayflower, man, the Mayflower one. So this is the first one that they're releasing today. And just showing the images. Of course, you can get on, the big fancy pants ones where they probably have it like sealed up and graded and whatever it is that they're selling for freaking $47. But yeah, that's the back of it. And that's the front of it. In God we trust. All right, moving on. Oh wait, hold on. Well, they got a 13-second clip. Let's see this. I forgot this was a video clip. Doesn't appear to have any sound. All right, so it's not really a video clip. Oh, okay. So they're just showing the front and the back. All right, I got it. U.S. Mint. I understand. Okay, so this is from the National Weather Service. Pacific moisture will continue to bring locally heavy coastal lower elevation rain and heavy mountain snow to the west coast and portions of the Intermountain West through Monday. A wintry mix will create hazardous travel across the northern plains, upper Midwest, and Great Lakes into early Monday. Dry, gusty winds are resulting in elevated to critical fire weather in the south central high plains. You can find all this out on weather.gov. So just mainly wanted to illustrate that. I think this is a little old. Yeah, this is from last night, so kind of old news at this point, but I didn't see one that was more recent. I guess I could have done my due diligence and actually gone to, yeah, so here we go, 47 minutes ago. 2 cold fronts passing through the northwest U.S. this week, with the main impact being heavy mountain snow across the Cascades and the northern Rockies. A quick-moving storm system will bring mixed precipitation, including some freezing rain to the upper Midwest and Great Lakes overnight into Tuesday, then the northeast U.S. Tuesday night into Wednesday. So, yeah, weather.gov, you know, there's plenty of sources where you could get your weather. I think most people, they probably just get it from just their phone. I think there's like default apps, I think, on everybody's phones with regard to the weather. But anyway, there is weather.gov if you want to get weather straight from the government, weather.gov. And yeah, we got a high pressure. I live in the state of Florida, so we're not getting really anything. I think we're going to be in the 70s all week, which is fantastic. It's fine by me. Anyway, rolling on past this wintry weather. Hope everybody stays safe out there. I know like a lot of places are covered in snow. At least they were last week. Like just about everything I saw last week involved whatever videos I saw. There was snow in the background pretty much everywhere. From Chairman Joe Gruters, President Trump continues to deliver. National average gas prices are down to $2.81. Promises made, promises kept. And from RNC Research earlier today, gas prices keep falling thanks to President Trump, on average $2.81. And as far as my neck of the woods, it sounds about right where I'm living, about $2.81. Yeah, so $2.86, $2.89, $2.79, $2.69. So about $2.69 looks like it's on the low end, at least where I live. $2.82. Oh yeah, that's right. You got to hold the arrow. Yeah, like right about on par, at least where I'm living. I mean, I'm sure in other areas it's a lot cheaper. I think Colorado, I don't know if they're still the cheapest location in the country, but at least a couple of weeks ago there was a report, and actually somebody had video proof because I shared it on the Swamp, that it dropped to $1.99, which would be absolutely amazing. It's been a long time. Oh yeah, look at this, got it beat. $1.89 in Houston, Texas. Even cheaper, $2.69 on Long Island. That's surprising that it's that cheap on Long Island. Lexington, South Carolina, $2.27. That's cool. I thought it was $1.99. Yeah, $1.99. That was in Colorado, dude. If you happen to live in Colorado. Oh, where is this? California? Yeah, not in California. $4.99. It's because they tax the shit out of it. And yeah, because they don't want you to use gas. They want you to drive electric. And they want you to jack up your electric costs out the yin-yang. Okay. EIA, crude oil prices fell in 2025 amid oversupply. Hey man, we can always use oversupply. I don't know if I would have used that word to describe our oil, or to describe oil prices, because if we had such a big oversupply, then first off, why isn't gas down to $1.79? And second of all, how come our strategic petroleum reserves haven't been filled to capacity yet? Because we could have just taken the oversupply. But I get it. It's what they're talking about, most likely global, not necessarily talking about inside the United States, an oversupply. I'm assuming that that's probably a global number. So crude oil prices generally declined in 2025, with supplies in the global crude oil market exceeding demand. Crude oil inventory builds in China muted some of the price decline. Events such as Israel's June 13th strikes on Iran and attacks between Russia and Ukraine targeting oil infrastructure periodically supported prices. On a monthly average basis, the price of Brent crude oil declined from a high of $79 a barrel all the way down to $63 a barrel at the end of the year, which was the lowest monthly average price since early of 2021. The annual average price was $69 per barrel, the lowest since 2020, even when adjusting for inflation. Hell yeah, let's go, man. And rolling on to the next. Rapid Response 47. The U.S. in 2025 became the first country to export more than 100 million metric tons of liquefied natural gas in a single year, powered by the startup of production from new plants. American energy dominance. U.S. sets new liquid natural gas export records in banner year marked by new capacity. Promises made, promises kept. This is going to be on Reuters. I thought they paywalled. Maybe they don't. Maybe I'm not thinking of the right place. But anyway, U.S. sets new LNG export records in banner year marked by new capacity. It's an image of a liquid natural gas tanker seen in front of the U.S. flag in this illustration taken May 19th of 2022. So in summary, the U.S. sets new annual liquid natural gas export record. U.S. monthly liquid natural gas exports rises past 11 MMT million metric tons, and Turkey buys more liquid natural gas from the U.S. than all of Asia in December. Wow. I mean, what are they buying all that liquid natural gas for? Are they going to resell it? The U.S. in 2025 became the first country to export more than 100 million metric tons of liquid natural gas in a single year. The world's largest liquid natural gas exporter sold 111 million metric tons of the fuel, almost 20 million metric tons more than its nearest rival Qatar, and nearly 23 million metric tons more than it did last year, LSEG data showed. So I'll just cut it there. You know, I'm sure this is boring for like 99% of us, but I did come across it, and looks like it captured a pretty decent amount of attention. Got over 1,000 likes for this announcement. Liquid natural gas, man. Congressman Mark Mesmer, Democrats' reckless policies have created a cost of living crisis, pricing families out of homeownership. Rep. Huchin's Affordable Homes Act will roll back the costly energy mandates driving up prices. And House GOP will continue to fix the economy for Hoosiers and all Americans. They talk about Indiana. So let me plug this in, the Homes Act, and see if we can get just a brief summary. The Homes Act. Let's do short answer and see if it'll return at least a brief, hopefully single paragraph. Then we'll get an idea. Okay, well, it's a little longer than I would have hoped, but that's all right. So the Homes Act, often stylized without an acronym expansion in recent bills, is a proposed federal legislation introduced in 2024 by Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Tina Smith in the 118th Congress. Well, that was kind of surprising. In short, it aims to address the U.S. housing crisis by establishing a new housing development authority within the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This public entity would acquire, rehabilitate, and develop distressed real estate to create and preserve up to 1.3 million permanently affordable, sustainable homes, rental, and ownership, shielded from market speculation with strong tenant protections, capped rents, and support for community-led models like cooperatives and land trusts. Note, there are other unrelated or older uses of Homes Act, such as 2019 Energy Efficiency Rebate Bill or a 2025, oh, maybe this is what we were supposed to look at, 2025 proposal targeting corporate home investors, but the prominent current federal housing-focused one is this 2024 bill. Now, is this, yeah, I mean, he's a member of the House, so the Affordable Homes Act, Rep. Huchin, okay. Maybe, I don't know, I can't help but wonder if it was that 2025 bill that it mentioned at the end. All right, let's see if it'll give me just a quick little synopsis. Homes Act of 2025. Amelia Sykes, Democrat of Ohio. Summer Lee, Democrat of Pennsylvania. This is probably not going to be the one that they were talking about. Full title, Houses Over Middle Class Exploitation Schemes Act. Aims to curb large corporate investors from dominating the single-family home market. Look, I am in total agreement with that. In short, it prohibits investors who acquire 50 or more single-family rental homes in a year from claiming federal tax deductions for interest or depreciation on those properties. This removes tax advantages that help big investors outbid individual buyers, driving up home prices and rents while making home ownership more accessible for families. The bill remains referred to the House Ways and Means Committee as of early 2026. Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with that. Maybe like take out the a year part and just put like for forever, for good. I think even 50's pushing it, to be honest with you. All right. And we'll head on down to the U.S. Department of Labor. President Trump is delivering on his promise to right-size our bloated federal government. Since he took office, there are 271,000 fewer federal employees than at the start of 2025. We'll continue our efforts to cut out any and all waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, which hopefully will include as much of the bureaucracy as humanly possible, because I don't want our national debt going up forever. It needs to be going in the other direction. From the New York Stock Exchange, oil stocks like ExxonMobil and Chevron rally after U.S. ousted Venezuela's President Nicholas Maduro. Yeah, that's a big shocker. Plus, as America prepares for its 250th birthday, the New York Stock Exchange becomes an exclusive partner of America 250. Kristen Schaller has more in the market update. Yeah, that kind of makes you wonder if they briefed Congress before they decided to go and apprehend Maduro. How many members of Congress would have bought up a shitload of shares in ExxonMobil, Chevron? Probably some did regardless. Anyway, let's give this a quick watch.
I am Kristen Schiller at the New York Stock Exchange. Well, stocks are fractionally higher Monday morning as Wall Street begins its first full week of trade in 2026.
It's better than lower.
Technology shares remain in demand, outperforming an extended trade. NYSE listed oil stocks like ExxonMobil and Chevron are up 2 after the U.S. ousted Venezuela's president over the weekend.
Not huge,
well, today
but
the NYSE becomes the exclusive stock exchange partner of America 250. As our nation celebrates its 250th birthday this year, take a look at the NYSE's commitment to start the semi-quincentennial.
As we stand on the cusp of America's 250th anniversary, we're reminded of the principles that have powered the world's greatest economy.
The New York Stock Exchange is a cathedral of the capital markets, replete with rhythms and rituals that allocate resources towards socially valued uses. That story will reach a rare milestone when our republic marks its 250th year. Anniversaries of this magnitude demand more than just ceremony. They ask something of us. They invite us to reflect, to ensure that the future that we shape will prove to be worthy of the legacy that we've inherited.
New York Stock Exchange. Well, apparently there's more to it.
Show.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Today, when the New York State Department of Military.
Let me go back. All right.
The NYSE will honor America's legacy throughout the year, including today, when the New York State Department of Military and Naval Affairs rings the opening bell. Download the NYSE TV app and tune into our morning show called NYSE Live at 9 a.m. Eastern to hear from Major General Ray Shields, the Adjunct General of New York. On today's show, you'll also see a preview of the latest Inside the Ice House podcast out today with Blackstone President Jonathan Gray. He sat down with our Lance Glenn to talk about the investment firm that touts more than $1 trillion in assets under management. Here at the Stock Exchange, I'm Kristen Scholler.
Over $1 trillion asset management. Okay, U.S. Department of Energy, 7 hours ago. U.S. Department of Energy awards $2.7 billion to restore American uranium enrichment. Sounds like we're going to get a boost in our energy sector. Nuclear energy. U.S. Department of Energy today announced $2.7 billion to strengthen domestic enrichment services over the next 10 years in support of President Trump's commitment to enhance energy security and reduce reliance on foreign suppliers. The historic investment expands U.S. capacity for low-enriched uranium and jumpstarts new supply chains and innovations for high-assay low-enriched uranium, or HALEU, to create American jobs and usher in the nation's nuclear renaissance. Quote, President Trump is catalyzing a resurgence in the nation's nuclear energy sector to strengthen American security and prosperity, said Secretary of Energy Chris Wright. Today's awards show that this administration is committed to restoring a secure domestic nuclear fuel supply chain capable of producing the nuclear fuels needed to power the reactors of today and the advanced reactors of tomorrow. Enrichment task orders. Last year, the DOE signed contracts with a total of 6 companies for LEU and HALEU enrichment that allowed them to bid on future work. Today, the department announced task order awards with 3 companies that will transition the United States away from foreign sources of uranium and diversify the nation's domestic fuel supply. Developing this new domestic production capacity for LEU and HALEU ensures an adequate fuel supply is available to maintain operations of the nation's 94 commercial reactors and builds a strong base to supply future deployments of advanced nuclear reactors. To ensure accountability, these awards will be distributed to the companies under a strict milestone approach. The following companies were awarded task orders totaling $2.7 billion to provide enrichment services for LEU and HALEU. American Centrifuge operating $900 million to create domestic HALEU or HALEU enrichment capacity. General Matter, $900 million to create domestic HALEU enrichment capacity, and Orano Federal Services, $900 million to expand U.S. domestic LEU enrichment capacity. Innovative technology funding opportunities. The Department of Energy also awarded an additional $28 million today to Global Laser Enrichment to continue advancing next-generation uranium enrichment technology for the nuclear fuel cycle. The award is the result of a competitive solicitation issued last December. More information on the Department of Energy's efforts to develop nuclear fuel supply chains for existing and future reactors can be found at, and looks like they've got 3 down here, so I'll just repost that if you're interested in having a look at those 3. Oh, wait, no, I didn't mean to quote it. No, just a simple repost will suffice. And heading on to the next topic. From Agricultural Research Service from earlier today, join us through January as we feature ARS's critical citrus greening research during National Citrus Month. That affects me directly because I live in the state of Florida, and citrus greening has absolutely ravaged our citrus industry. And so a lot of people probably haven't noticed, but it's pretty hard to find an orange that's grown in Florida these days in the grocery store. You'll see oranges with the sticker from California or South Africa. I think there's like a couple of Central American countries. Brazil's another big one with their orange industry or citrus industry. But here in Florida, we've lost like 80% of our citrus industry because of citrus greening, which started around 2005. So let's give this
Citrus greening is the most serious threat the citrus industry has ever faced, and it could spread easily by certain insects. In Florida, citrus greening has caused more than a 70% decline in citrus production since
70,
2005, and it
I heard
continues
80,
to spread
but
throughout the
I don't
United
think 70 is
States.
still bad.
Citrus growers need help now. USDA scientists have made great progress in not only understanding how the disease works, but how growers can protect citrus trees from this disease. Our research is evolving as we look to attack this devastating disease with a wide array of solutions. USDA recently created a single web portal to capture our latest developments on citrus greening. Visit the portal to learn how we're using revolutionary research to detect, control, and eventually eliminate citrus greening.
All right. Well, they got a portal. Let's see if they've linked that below. They have not, but all right, whatever. There's no portal, but it was in the video. I guess I'll just repost that. And moving on to the next post, moving on to the next topic from farmers.gov. Few figures embody the spirit of innovation in American agriculture like George Washington Carver, pictured here studying a yucca plant. The value that Carver placed on supporting the American farmer is one we are proud to share this George Washington Carver Day and every day. So happy George Washington Carver Day, y'all. And rolling on. TSA. News alert. TSA screened just over 45 million individuals during the holiday travel period from December 19th through January the 4th. This figure represents an average daily screening volume of about 2.65 million people and nearly 800,000 more than projected. Holy cow, man. That was a busy travel season. A lot of people are broke. The middle class is suffering, but they're not suffering enough to cancel their travel plans. All right, from the FTC, influencers are pushing this illegal trick to quote-unquote fix your credit report. So I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I'll see if I can find exactly where it is that they were talking about. Matter of fact, they might actually just mention it in this brief video here.
You're trying to fix your credit, but how do you avoid scams? Here's how. Don't believe anyone who offers a quick fix. And don't trust companies that say they can help you fix your credit, but only if you pay them first. It's illegal for them to ask you to pay up front.
Ooh,
don't believe
did you know
anyone
that?
who promises to repair your credit by removing accurate information from your credit report. That's illegal, especially if they tell you to dispute a debt you know is yours and you've been paying back.
Okay,
over
that's
time.
what I was looking for.
If a company tells you to file a false identity theft report about a debt you owe, stop. Filing a false identity theft report is a crime. If a credit repair company can do something legally, you can do it yourself for free. So learn more at ftc.gov/credit repair.
You know, they actually raise a pretty good point. You could probably figure all this out on your own, and it probably isn't rocket science. Probably just like the website or as it shows there, ftc.gov/credit repair. I'm sure they probably got all the same tips and tricks that these credit repair agencies that charge you God knows how much money to quote unquote fix your credit. But yeah, in this article, it talks about, so here it is. Some online influencers are telling people they have a fix. Just simply file a false identity theft report about a debt that you owe. That's advice not to take. Filing a false identity theft report may leave you even worse off, and it's a crime that could get you a fine, imprisonment, or both because it's fraudulent. So yeah, that was the main point that I was looking to share in this article, but of course it'll be linked. And from NASA, a team using NASA Hubble has made the first confirmed detection of a new type of astronomical object, a starless, gas-rich dark matter cloud nicknamed Cloud 9. Here's what this object is teaching us about dark matter and the early universe on go.nasa.gov. And it's Magenta's radio data from the ground-based Very Large Array showing the presence of Cloud 9. The dashed circle marks the peak of radio emission, which is where researchers focus their search for stars. Hubble found no stars within Cloud 9. The few objects within its boundaries are background galaxies. That's really cool. Yep, you can see them right there, the background galaxies, those little smudges. No stars to be seen, just background galaxies. But they evidently discovered matter there, which is dark matter. So the team using, okay, so we already read that, but well, whatever. So anyway, a team using NASA's Hubble Space Telescope uncovered a new type of astronomical object, a starless gas-rich dark matter cloud considered a relic or remnant of early galaxy formation, nicknamed Cloud 9. This is the first confirmed detection of such an object in the universe, a finding that furthers the understanding of galaxy formation, the early universe, and the nature of dark matter itself. This is a tale of a failed galaxy, said the program's principal investigator, Alejandro Benitez Lambe, of the Milano Bicocca, or Bicocca, I don't even know, in Milan, Italy. I don't know, I'm not Italian. And in science, we usually learn more from the failures than from the successes. In this case, seeing no stars is what proves the theory right. It tells us that we have found in the local universe a primordial building block of a galaxy that hasn't formed. The results published in the Astrophysical Journal Letters were presented at a press conference Monday at the 247th meeting of the American Astronomical Society in Phoenix. This cloud is a window into the dark universe, said team member Andrew Fox of the Association of Universities for Research in Astronomy Space Telescope Science Institute for the European Space Agency. We know from theory that most of the mass in the universe is expected to be dark matter, but it's difficult to detect this dark material because it doesn't emit light. Cloud 9 gives us a rare look at a dark matter-dominated cloud. And there it is. That's the dark matter-dominated cloud. That is very cool. And finally, the last thing I got from NASA, kick off the new year with some new celestial sights this January. Keep an eye out for Jupiter looking big and bright, a conjunction between the moon and Saturn, and also a stellar beehive. Happy 2026 and happy sky watching. And of course, they got another link there. We'll check out the video.
Jupiter is at its biggest and brightest. The moon and Saturn share the sky, and the beehive cluster makes an appearance. That's what's up this January. January 10th, Jupiter will be at its most brilliant of the entire year. This night, Jupiter will be at what's called opposition, meaning that Earth will be directly between Jupiter and the Sun. In this alignment, Jupiter will appear bigger and brighter in the night sky than it will all year. Talk about starting off the new year bright. To see Jupiter at its best this year, look to the east, and all evening long, you'll be able to see the planet in the constellation Gemini. It will be one of the brightest objects in the night sky. Only the moon and Venus will be brighter. Saturn and the moon will share the sky on January 23rd as part of a conjunction. A conjunction happens when objects in the night sky look close together,
really close,
even though they're actually far apart. To spot the pair, look to the west, and you'll see Saturn just below the moon, sparkling in the night sky. The beehive cluster will be visible in the night sky throughout January. The beehive cluster, more formally known as Messier 44 or M44, is made of at least 1,000 stars. It's an open star cluster, meaning it's a loosely bound group of stars. There are thousands of open star clusters like the beehive in the Milky Way galaxy. To see the beehive cluster, look to the eastern night sky just after sunset and before midnight throughout the month. Especially great nights to spot the cluster are around the middle of January, when the cluster isn't too high or too low in the sky to see. With dark skies, you might be able to spot the beehive with just your eyes, but binoculars or a small telescope will help. Here are the phases of the moon for January. You can stay up to date on all of NASA's missions exploring the solar system and beyond at science.nasa.gov. I'm Chelsea Goad from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and that's what's up for this month.
All right, well, very cool. Very cool. Space is very big. Space is very cool. Space is awesome, man. All right, so anyway, that'll conclude this episode of The Swamp. If you enjoyed the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll be back with a new show tomorrow as I do The Swamp every evening, covering The Swamp and everyone in it, the politicians, bureaucrats, the agencies, and everything else. And I also post daily episodes on X, so feel free to comment there too if you'd like. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your night, and God bless America.